Today, we're going to go into a little bit of detail about how to use a guest speaker most effectively in a classroom. And I'm going to say that this has a lot of different options and variables in order to make it work at its best and most effective. The number one way is to first talk with the teacher in whose class the guest speaker is going to be in. I know that sounds obvious, but I can't tell you the number of times when I used to have guest speakers show up at a school and the teacher had never even thought of what it is they wanted the guest speaker to talk about. And because of that, the guest speaker was kind of at sixes and sevens to do anything other than talk about themselves. Now, there's nothing wrong with a guest speaker talking about themselves and talk about how they got into the industry and the particular career path they took. But there is a challenge to that. And that is the more effective the guest speaking event is, the younger that guest speaker needs to be. If you have someone who's coming in there and talking about how they got into the industry in the 80s or 90s, there's going to be a certain percentage of the students, mainly most of them, who are going to think that's not relevant anymore. That was a totally different industry, and that's not how it works anymore. So in that case, what I would have done is I would have briefed the instructor that the guest speaker is a little bit older. And so what the guest speaker would do instead is focus on the skills that the people in the classroom might need in order for them to hire them, and what they really want them to have as that baseline of skill. Consequently, on the other side of it, the younger the person is, unless they're really an enfant terrible and have really achieved a lot very quickly, I would go the other direction and have them spend a lot of time discussing how they got there and what some of the steps that they took in particular that would be relevant to the students who are sitting there right now. It's also important for the instructor to have a chance to sit down and talk with the guest speaker so they can tell them where the students are and what they think the students would benefit from the most. Because, there's nothing, trust me, if someone has done a couple of guest speaking gigs, they know exactly how to fill 3 hours without any prompts at all. But it's much more helpful if we can make it a useful experience for everyone. So if the teacher has any particular areas that they're not really comfortable with, that's where it should really start. And I'm going to tell you, with the technology changing and articulating as quickly as it is, that's actually the best way to do it. And the reason I'm going to say that that's the best way to do it is because there's almost no way that a teacher, especially a full-time faculty member, is going to be able to keep up with all of the changes that are happening in the industry on a continual basis. So what the guest speaker can do there is serve as a bridge, can serve as kind of a way of catching you up to the present. Or, for example, one of the most popular workshops we have, which we'll discuss later, but we do it in class as well, is to discuss for cinematography classes the role of the digital imaging technician, the DIT. I would strongly suggest that in a classroom setting, you do not have large groups of guest speakers. I think you should have at the most 2 or 3 at the same time. Now, 2 is an ideal number, 1 older, 1 younger. Preferably 1 minority, female, whatever, and one maybe an older guy or something like that. There's any way of breaking it up, but you do want to kind of convey, without saying it directly, what the diversity of the industry is, the difference in changes that have been happening in it, and make it visible for the student rather than something that's just a question on a test. So again, there's any number of ways to handle this, but the relationship between the instructor and the guest speaker needs to be established in advance.